It is now time for the Robesonian Sports Report with Chris Stiles on 97.1 FM, 1340 AM, WAGR in Lumberton, covering sports for Robeson County. Now here's your host, Chris Stiles.
And welcome to the Robesonian Sports Report as we take a quick look at last week's high school football and local college football as well in the area in Robeson County, and look ahead to next week a little later on in the show. And I'm your host, Chris Stiles, sports editor at the Robesonian. So thanks for joining us here on WAGR. And looking at last week's action, starting with Red Springs and Fairmont, it was a 16-6 win for Red Springs, and this is kind of a weird way to frame it, but it was as dominant of a 16-6 game as could reasonably be imaginable. The total yards was 323 for Red Springs, 43 for Fairmont. So Red Springs definitely controlled this one, controlled the clock pretty well, controlled the possession, and ultimately outgained the Golden Tornadoes by nearly 300 yards. Red Springs used the pass like they have not done quite that efficiently all season. 206 passing yards for Scotty Locklear. He was 11 for 15, and I'll also note that he was named Homecoming King, so big night for him. TJ Ellerby caught 5 of those passes for 92 yards for the Red Devils. The run game was still very important, very effective for them. Jakelson Mack had 97 rushing yards and a touchdown. First drive, they came out and did a lot of direct snaps to Curtis Wilson at the running back position, and he led them down the field, and they scored on that first drive. It was 8-6 at halftime, and then a couple of prolonged drives in the second half for Red Springs. One ended up in no points, but it took a lot of time off the clock, and then the second one they scored on to build that two-possession lead. And 216 out of Red Springs' 323 yards came in the second half of this game. This was the first home win for Red Springs since the spring 2021 season, ending a 12-game streak. And it was as they returned home after a month, over a month away from home, 4 games plus a bye week. So big win for the Red Devils on homecoming, and they get back to an even 4-4 for the season. This after winning just 1 game last year. Fairmont's at 1-7 with 2 weeks remaining in the season. Elsewhere, Lumberton's long losing streak is over after Friday's 41-18 win over Douglas Byrd. It was a 19-game losing streak, and they handed Douglas Byrd their 9th straight loss. Jacoby Peavy ran for 226 yards and 4 touchdowns for the Pirates. His touchdown runs were 17, 40, 73, and 33 yards in length, so he had some explosive plays, certainly, in this game for Lumberton. Isaiah Whittington scored on a touchdown run. Trayvon Moore threw a touchdown to pass to Reggie Bush. And been a long time coming for the Pirates, obviously. I feel like they had shown some moderate improvement, even if it wasn't showing in the results yet, at times in Dennis McFadden's first year. It had been a tough road for them in a tough conference, a deep conference, and also with the attrition that they've had in the program, with injuries and beyond. So finally seeing a payoff in the results on Friday night, and not just in winning a game, but doing so convincingly. They won by, 23 points. So and really controlled the game from start to finish in that game. It won't get easier for the Pirates this week, unfortunately, as they're playing 71st, who has a long winning streak in the regular season. But we'll talk about that one coming up a little later on in the show. You're listening to the Robesonian Sports Report on WAGR. I'm your host, Chris Stiles, sports editor at the Robesonian, going over last week's high school football locally. 71st earned a 48-0 win over Purnell Sweat. This was as advertised for the Falcons, their 28th straight regular season win, their 19th straight in the United 8 Conference. This was a 34-0 game at halftime. DeAndre Nance rushed for 3 touchdowns, was also efficient in about 10 attempts passing the ball. And Donovan Frederick rushed for 136 for the Falcons. It's the 4th straight loss for Purnell Sweat after they started the season 4-0. They've scored just 21 points in those 4 losses, 2 shutouts, including this one. The good news for the Rams is the schedule does lighten back up a little bit the last 2 weeks with Douglas Byrd and Lumberton coming up to finish the season. So they'll try to get it back on track and perhaps finish over 500. And they're right in the thick of the playoff race as well. We'll talk about that in the preview segment coming up. St. Paul's defeated West Bladen 49-21. Fifth straight win for St. Paul's after they started the season 0-3. This was a dominant performance, 21-0 at half, 35-7 after three quarters. Mike Setzer, the head coach, talked about it was a concerted effort, those are his words, in all three phases of the game, more so than any game they've played this year, he said. Joshua McBride rushed for over 200 yards and a touchdown. Quinto McNeil had 82 rushing yards. Tyler Parks rushed for a couple scores. And a good night passing the ball. Theo Setzer had 11 for 14 passing for 156 yards and a couple of touchdowns. It set St. Paul's up for a big showdown against Clinton this week with the Southeastern Athletic Conference lead on the line. That's a home game at GS Kinlaw Stadium, and we'll preview that one coming up a little later on in the show. UNCP defeated Fairmont State 49-7. It was a just very incredible performance for the Braves on all fronts. A record-breaking day in the run game, 470 rushing yards, which shattered a school record. They rushed for 386 last year against West Virginia Wesleyan, who incidentally they played this week. 6 rushing touchdowns is a school record as well. 8 sacks on defense. That's not a school record, but it's the third most in school history. And this was against a team in Fairmont State that had allowed only, I think it was 81 yards per game rushing coming into the game. And here UNCP rushed for as many yards almost as they had allowed combined for the season to that point. And I wrote a column actually on Monday about how they were able to, and using the phrase be the exception, and kind of building on that phrase, which was, I must add, uttered accidentally kind of by myself leading up to that game, asking Coach Mark Hall what their goals were for that game and facing the Fairmont State rush defense, and could they, quote-unquote, be the exception. And that kind of struck me as a neat little mantra, and it can apply, obviously, far beyond football, facing any challenge in life, frankly. So the Braves certainly took that to heart. Colin Johnson, the quarterback, ran for 153 yards and 3 scores, and was also 9 for 15 throwing the ball for 90 yards and a touchdown. And this is a guy that played linebacker last year, even while he was backing up then quarterback Josh Jones. He played some snaps at the linebacker position, had 39 tackles for the season, and has converted back full-time to being a quarterback this year. Didn't start the first couple games, but replaced Caleb Pierce mid-game against Charleston, and the rest is history, as they say, literally, as the Braves have set some records in a couple of games this season, actually. A passing or a reception touchdown record earlier this season for Trey Dixon as well. Sincere Baines ran for 186 yards and 2 scores. Steady increase in workload and production for him throughout the season, from I don't think he had a carry in the opener against Fayetteville State to now leading the way in this record-setting rushing performance. And don't want to leave out Jaquan Kelly either. He had 94 yards and a touchdown on just 8 carries for the Braves in this game. And I mentioned 8 sacks for the defense. The team has a promotion actually where every sack is Food Line will donate 1,000 meals to a local feeding program, and so that obviously not a joking matter dealing with the hunger crisis, but we were kind of joking after the game about these guys are feeding Robeson County all by themselves with 8 sacks in the game. Ja'May Blank leads the Mountain East Conference with in sacks for the season. He had 2 more in that game on Saturday. And we're going to talk much more about this coming up in the next segment with UNCP head coach Mark Hall joining us on the phone here in just a moment. You can read about all this on Robesonian.com. Obviously, football and much more here in the fall sports season. But your home for all things local sports is Robesonian.com. And we're just getting started here on the Robesonian Sports Report. As I mentioned, Mark Hall will join us after the break, the head coach at UNCP. That's coming up. Stay with us here on WAGR. Back on the Robesonian Sports Report here on WAGR, and we're joined over the phone by UNCP head football coach Mark Hall. How's it going, Coach?
Doing great. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely. And you guys are coming off a record-setting performance on Saturday, 470 rushing yards for the team. That's a single-game program record, as well as 6 rushing touchdowns, also a record. So take me through that game and that performance for you guys, that astounding efficiency on the ground.
We had a interesting week of practice. I thought the guys were locked in by the time we got to game day on Saturday. We knew we were going to have to run the football to be successful. Fairmont was coming in 5-1. They weren't giving up many yards on the ground. They were scoring a lot of points. So we knew we were going to have to play a really good game to have a chance to win. But I thought we came out with the right mindset and the right mentality coming in terms of just we were going to play hard, be physical, on both sides of the ball and on special teams. And I thought we got off to a great start. I think we really just set the tone from a physical perspective on the offensive line in that first drive. And I think everybody kind of came off after the first touchdown and thought, hey, this might be something we could stick with all day. And, they did a great job up front. We got some really good playmakers with the ball in their hands, and, we had a great day on the ground.
Yeah, it was a 49-7 win over Fairmont State. And I want to talk about a couple of those playmakers in particular. Colin Johnson had 153 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns in that game on Saturday. And he's the Braves' leading rusher for the season from the quarterback position, and will also probably hit 1,000 passing yards this coming week. Just a few away from that. So, and this is a guy that was a linebacker last year while also backing up then quarterback Josh Jones. So tell me about Colin and how exceptional of a player he is.
He's been outstanding for us. I'm really happy that the season's going the way it is so far for him just individually. When I got here last December, he was a guy I knew was a quarterback in high school and at one point was a QB within this program, and I knew he played linebacker. But I felt like his skill set really fit our offense well. We've always used the QB in the run game. He's actually an elite runner for us at this level. So he's made several plays, with his feet, both on design runs and in the pass game where he just takes off if there's nothing there. He's a really hard matchup for defenses because he's fast and he runs hard. He finishes runs. He's played extremely well, and, I think he's got a chance, obviously, to finish this season, really strong. And then going into this offseason, going into a senior year, I think, it gives us some comfort knowing that we found our QB here for the next, season and a half.
And another guy that had a huge Saturday, Sincere Baines, who's kind of seen his production increase as his workload has increased throughout the season. 186 yards and 2 touchdowns on Saturday. And I wrote that Robeson County fans are glad he's on their side now after watching him at Jack Britt for so many years. But, he's such an explosive playmaker for you guys.
He's outstanding. I've told you this before. I think he's going to be a star. I think he's starting to see it here as the season's gone on. We could see it, honestly, the first week of camp, that he was going to be special. And, we kind of just took it slow with him as a freshman and let him get confident and comfortable with our scheme. And over time, he's played more. He's got the ball more. And, now that we've hit the second half of the season, I think, we're starting to see some of that production. But, he had an amazing career at Jack Britt. He was one of our top gets in our first recruiting class here. We told him in recruiting he was going to play as a true freshman and be a big part of what we're doing. And, obviously that's come to fruition here for us down the stretch. But, his speed is, there's not many guys at this level that can run with him when we can get him into the open field. And, he's done a great job for us, and I think he's going to finish the season strong as well.
Yep. And one more guy I want to single out, didn't have as good of a game on Saturday, but Trey Dixon's been phenomenal for you guys all season. Over 500 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns, 240 yards and 4 touchdowns out of that came against Wheeling, both of those school records on the receiving side. It was back on September 30th. What has he meant for this offense this season?
He's been huge for us, just having a senior that's out there that's played a lot of football games. He's really bought into what we're doing offensively. Honestly, I was really proud of him Saturday. He only got one ball thrown to him. The just game plan and kind of the conditions didn't really lend itself to being one of those days where we were going to probably be throwing it a bunch. But, he played extremely hard. He blocked well. A lot of those big runs that we sprung were because of him and the other receivers. But he's had a really good year. I'm hoping that in these next 3 games we can give him some more opportunities. And, I think he's got a great chance of being a first-team all-conference guy for us here in the Mountain East as a senior.
And on the defensive end, not too often that you have more sacks than points allowed, but that was the case on Saturday with 8 sacks and allowing 7 points. The 7 points even came on a short field. So how do you assess that defensive performance, which may not have been as much of a headline maker as the record-setting offensive performance, but was equally impressive?
Yeah, I think those guys played lights out. I think they've progressively gotten better here down the stretch. And I told those guys in our Monday, team meeting that we always have that I thought the defense is really what allowed us to have the day as a team and on offense. They only had 80 yards or something like that in total offense. Only scored the 7 points. I mean, we held them to 7 yards rushing, and they were coming in, one of the top rushing teams in our conference. But the defensive line's been outstanding. We got some playmakers. We got a lot of defensive speed in the defensive line. We got a lot of guys that have been productive for us. I think we really just got after Fairmont State up front. And, I think by the end of the game, they didn't have any answers for us.
Yeah, and Ja'May Blank, a big part of that, 2 sacks on Saturday, and he leads the MEC in sacks this season. And you've been with him first at Chowan and now at UNCP for quite some time now. So tell me about his growth and the transition from Chowan here to Pembroke.
Yeah, he's gotten better every year we've had him. His senior year at Southern Durham, he actually led the state of North Carolina in sacks. But he was a little bit on the undersized side in terms of the weight. So he came to Chowan during COVID. He was probably a little bit over 200 pounds because he was a wrestler in high school as well. So he had a chance to really redshirt during the COVID year. Didn't really play much as a redshirt freshman in 21 for us. He sat behind a couple all-conference guys, and then last year in 22, he was all-conference for us at Chowan, had a really good year. And then obviously him coming here to Pembroke, he was one of the main guys we were hoping to be able to bring with us. Not only is he a great player, but he's really helped just kind of change and drive the culture we're trying to build here at UNCP. So he's been huge for us, and he's having a great year. He's actually leading our conference, but he's second in the country in sacks. I think he's got a chance to really push to maybe even lead the country if he can finish strong. So I think that's just a testament to his hard work and his buy-in to what we're trying to do on that side.
Yep. And 39 total transfers into the program this season, and 20 of those came from Chowan. I think that says a lot about for you and your coaching staff about how many players wanted to come with you. But discuss that process and that transition as you took the job at UNCP and bringing those guys with you.
Those guys were huge for us. Obviously, we knew what kind of players they were, but we really knew what kind of people they were more than anything. And I think when you're taking over a team and you're trying to establish a new culture, you want as many guys as you can have with you that understand what we're all about and what it's going to take for us to win and build a championship culture. And so, those 20 guys that we brought in, not only were we counting on them for the plays on the field, but really they've been more important behind the scenes, just kind of setting the tone and the temperament of what we want our team to be every day and what we do. And then, we brought in a bunch of other guys as well. We're just trying to get the right guys in the building and, bring a new mindset and an attitude and a new level of work ethic, with what we're doing every single day so we can see the results on the field on Saturdays.
Here on the Robesonian Sports Report on WAGR, I'm your host, Chris Stiles, and we're talking to UNCP head football coach Mark Hall. And, Coach, it's been about 10 months since you were hired at UNCP, so how do you assess at this point what the job has been, what's been kind of as you expected, and maybe what's been surprising for you?
Well, I've loved my time here so far. I'm extremely blessed to be here, and My family loves it here, so I'm looking forward to continuing to build the program. And, I kind of, you never know what you're getting yourself into with anything until you dive headfirst into it. And, I'm not surprised of the support that we have here, both on campus and in the community. And, I think people really want to see, this program do well. And, I knew it was going to be a lot of work. We were taking over a team that hadn't been successful in a while. So, those things usually take a little bit of time, and so we started the season off not great, but we just kind of stayed the course, and now we find ourselves a game over 500 with a chance to finish pretty strong and have the best year in, several years. So, I think things are kind of right on track with what I kind of expected it to be. I don't think we're that far away from being able to compete for the Mountain East Championship. We just, we needed this first year. We needed at least one recruiting class just to kind of set the tone, and we're going to have a really good offseason and a good second recruiting class to take that big step that we're looking for.
Braves are 4-3 as of right now, 3-3 in the Mountain East. And the last 6 games or so have been, 5 of those have been against the top half of the MEC, basically. And the next 3 weeks are against the bottom 3 teams in the conference standings. So coming off the momentum from last week, going into these final 3 games, a chance certainly for a really strong finish. So how do you want to make sure that that momentum sustains itself when you guys finish strong?
Well, I think we just got to do what we talk about all the time, which is just focus on getting better every single day. The results will take care of themselves if we build the right habits and go about our day-to-day operation with a lot of attention to detail and a lot of effort, and just focus on getting better. There was a lot of things we left out on the field, even though it was great to win 49-7. There's still areas that we can certainly improve, and we're working on doing that. So, we're taking it one day at a time, 1 week at a time. We got to make sure we travel well and go up to West Virginia Wesleyan this week, and we got to perform. No one's going to be talking about our 49-7 game if we go up there and don't play well. So, we got an important Wednesday practice today, and we're just taking it one day at a time.
Yeah, the Braves are at West Virginia Wesleyan at 1 p.m. on Saturday. And how do you make sure your team stays locked in when we actually talked about this a couple of days ago? They can see the same numbers that you and I can see as far as how much West Virginia Wesleyan has struggled this season. They haven't won a game. So how do you make sure that the 18 to 22-year-olds in your program kind of stay locked in and focused on the task at hand?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to what I just said. I mean, we've really talked about for the last 10 months of just focusing on getting better. And I think at the beginning of the season, we were too focused on just the results of everything. And I think that's where we, had some lapses. And, I think the last month, I think these guys have really bought into just, hey, every single day I'm going to show up with the right mindset. I'm going to work. I'm going to focus on getting better as a player, as an offense and defensive unit, and then overall as a team. So, we talk about not only, just winning, but how we win is important as well. So, I think there's a certain standard and there's a certain way we want our team to look, and, it takes a lot of work for that to show up on Saturday. So, we talked about it Monday. We're not playing against, the team and their record. We're really focusing on us and how we go about doing everything.
Yeah. And one non-football question I just wanted to ask you. You're a fan of the Atlanta Braves, as even you're the head coach of the UNC Braves, but you and I are both Atlanta Braves fans. I'm from the South, so that kind of makes sense. They're the closest Major League franchise, but you're from Ohio, so I was just curious how that came about.
Kind of a weird story. When I was in 6th grade, everybody in the area I grew up in Ohio is mainly Cincinnati Reds fans, and I still do kind of root for the Reds if the Braves aren't doing well. But my 6th grade teacher's daughter happened to be dating David Justice at that time, and got a chance to meet him when I was in 6th grade, and he was a pretty good player, and I just kind of decided, hey, I was going to root for the Braves. And so ever since I was 11, I pretty much have rooted for the Atlanta Braves.
Yep, a good one to root for in David Justice as well. Coach Hall, thanks for joining us here on the Robesonian Sports Report.
I appreciate you guys having me on, and we'll look forward to talking to you guys again soon.
Yep, thanks. And we'll be right back here on WAGR. And back on the Robesonian Sports Report here on WAGR. I'm your host, Chris Stiles, and as we do in the last segment of the show each week, looking ahead to this week's high school football as well as UNCP, and what's been rare this season, a 5-game week. We have 5 high schools here in Robeson County, and I think this is actually the first Friday that all 5 have played the same week. One quick note, as we record this, Fairmont and West Bladen has been moved from Friday to Thursday due to inclement weather. And as of right now, as I'm speaking, that's the only game that's been moved. And so certainly stay with Robesonian.com now and beyond as we will update any additional game changes due to the weather. So they won't all 5 be playing at the same time on Friday night, but it is the first 5-game week of the season, as none of them are playing each other. That's been pretty rare this season. Every week just about we've had an in-county game. But we have a big game nonetheless, starting off with St. Paul's and Clinton playing each other with the Southeastern Athletic Conference lead on the line. 3rd straight year that it's been a kind of de facto conference championship game in this matchup. And the first 2 have kind of been classics in their own way. The first one in 2021, the score was 58-32, so not necessarily all that close, but it was a game that St. Paul's pulled away in the 4th quarter, and it was the first 400-yard, 6-touchdown game out of 2 of them for Kamarian Baldwin that season, on his way to eventually play currently at James Madison University. But and then last year, Clinton won on a hook and lateral touchdown in the final couple of minutes in a 23-20 thriller. Frankly, one of the best high school games I've ever covered, especially with all that was on the line in that one. So these 2 teams are very familiar with each other. They've played big games against each other the last couple of years and do so again on Friday. Clinton has dominated everything in its path this season. They've outscored the opposition 407-91. That includes 181-28 in conference games. They've won every game by 26 points or more and have scored 40 or more every game. They've given up 15 or less every game except one, and even that one was 22 points to Wallace Rose Hill. So, again, they still won very comfortably. Josiah McLaurin, who is listed as a wide receiver, but is also their leading rusher with over 700 yards and 14 touchdowns, rushing the ball, nearly 300 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns as well. Josiah Robinson running the ball, similar numbers to McLaurin, nearly 700 yards and 11 touchdowns. And Nigerian Blackwell's been a very efficient quarterback with over 900 yards, 12 touchdowns, and just 1 interception this season. An experienced Clinton defense has 3 strong linebackers as well as a good safety in Alexander Evans, defensive end in Amaris Williams with several sacks on the season. St. Paul's defense will be the best defense Clinton has seen this season. Now, granted, that could still mean a 35 or 40-point night, as their lowest output is 40 so far. But nonetheless, if St. Paul's defense can get even just a few stops, can make a big difference in a game like this. The St. Paul's offense has been up and down through the season, but they've been better in conference play, and this will be the best defense that they've seen. So it'll be a showdown on both sides of the ball for sure. Clinton leads the all-time series 6-1. They're 5-1 as conference foes. That 2021 St. Paul's win was their only win in the series. So I'll be there covering this one if it's Friday or if it's another night. And I'll reiterate that as I speak. It's a Friday. It's still on schedule for Friday, but it's certainly the game of the week and one of the games of the week statewide, frankly. As Clinton, probably this is their best test of the season and certainly a lot on the line in the conference standings. Elsewhere, Lumberton's at 71st. Lumberton coming off the end of the 19-game losing streak, and now they will face a team in 71st that's won 29 in a row in the regular season. And Lumberton has not won back-to-back games since 2017. Beating Douglasburg was one thing. Being competitive with 71st will be another. as I said on another program last week, 71st, they're just bigger, stronger, faster, more athletic than everybody they play, it seems like. And that will hold especially true against a program that, unfortunately for Lumberton, is struggling as they have, even as they do come off that win last week. 71st has won 10 straight meetings in the series, and including 6 as conference opponents, 6 in a row. And 71st leads the all-time series 11-4. Lumberton last beat the Falcons in 2012. And this one will be a steep uphill climb for the Pirates. Purnell Sweat is at Douglas Byrd on Friday night. The Rams are looking to kind of reverse course after a 4-game losing streak since they started on a 4-game winning streak. They're 4-4 now for the season. They face a Douglas Byrd team that's lost 9 in a row, but whose last win was last year against Purnell Sweat. Douglas Byrd has won the last 2 years, in fact, in this series, including that 28-20 win last year in Pembroke. And the Eagles lead the series, all-time series, 5-3. Purnell Sweat enters this game 26th in the RPI for the 4A East region, the state's RPI metric that they use. However, while there's 32 playoff teams, Sweat is currently projected out of the field because they're behind Jack Britt in the conference standings, and Jack Britt is 33rd in RPI. But Sweat can't make the playoffs over the Buccaneers because of where they sit in the conference standings. However, that standings issue could potentially resolve itself over the next 2 weeks, as Sweat has Douglas Byrd and Lumberton remaining, so their conference record should improve if they take care of business in those couple of games that they'll be favored in. Looking at this one against Douglas Byrd, the Eagles scored their second most points all season in last week's loss to Lumberton. They did score 22 against Red Springs. That's their most. Isaiah Pope had a couple of touchdown passes to Talik McCollum in that game, and Pope ran for one as well. Those have been a couple of the strong individuals all season for the Eagles as they face the Rams this week. Here on the Robesonian Sports Report on WAGR, I'm your host, Chris Stiles, sports editor at the Robesonian. And looking at local high school football this week, Midway is at Red Springs. And Red Springs is another team that kind of right there on the playoff bubble going into the last 2 weeks of the season. They're 35th in the RPI for the 2A East region, projected by High School OT as the third team out of the playoffs right now. And a game like this, where the strength of schedule is going to be bolstered, playing Midway, who's 6-2. If you could win the game on top of that, that would be huge for playoff prospects. Midway coming off a 58-0 loss to Clinton last week. The Raiders have played a lot of high-scoring games, including that 80-58 loss to James Keenan earlier in the season that I mentioned a couple weeks back. That really just jumps off the page so much. But several conference leaders statistically for Midway. Tripp Westbrook has thrown for over 1,600 yards, 17 touchdowns. Andre Gregory has 747 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. Kamari McNeil, 515 receiving yards, 9 touchdowns. And then Cody Ammons has been strong running the ball. He may hit 1,000 yards for the season on Friday night, and he's got 16 touchdowns on the ground. So this is a challenge for the Red Springs defense, probably the best offense that they've faced. Well, them and Clinton, maybe neck and neck, I guess. Although the results last week at Clinton beating Midway may suggest otherwise as well. But nonetheless, a very strong offense for Midway. And even as the defense is one of Red Springs' moderate strengths, this will be a test for them. Not sure if they can keep up with Midway if it ends up being a shootout, if they can score enough to keep up. So they kind of need to keep it to a low-scoring game, not unlike what they did last week against Fairmont, for that matter. Red Springs leads the all-time series 3-2. Midway's won the last 2 years since they became conference opponents in the Southeastern, including a 59-14 win last year. Red Springs won 3 previous meetings before that. All of them were playoff games in 2011, 2012, and 2019. So that's Midway at Red Springs coming up on Friday night. Fairmont's at West Bladen. As I mentioned, this game has been moved to Thursday night, and it's the 2 remaining teams that are winless in the Southeastern in conference play. They're meeting in Bladenboro, losing streaks of 4 for West Bladen and 7 for Fairmont. West Bladen lost last week 49-21 to St. Paul's and has been outscored in their last 4 games 237-78. They've been struggling here, especially on the defensive end. 64% of West Bladen's offensive production does come through the pass. don't see a whole lot of teams like that at the high school level. Hunter Hester, over 600 passing yards and 7 touchdowns. And their best receiver has been Hezekiah Adams. He's got 4 receiving touchdowns and has also run for 3. And I'll add he has 2 interceptions on the defensive side, playing both ways. And Jamar Richardson has been an impressive defensive player for them with 35 tackles this season. Fairmont's been struggling on offense throughout the season. Coach Jeremy Carthen, to paraphrase him here, said not that they're giving up on this season, but they're kind of going to use these last couple of games with the playoffs probably out of the picture as kind of seeing what might work, what might not, and kind of evaluating everybody that's going to be coming back next year. Fairmont leads the all-time series 10-8. The teams have split 14 meetings as conference opponents, but Fairmont's won 8 out of the last 9, including an 18-0 win last year. West Bladen did win in 2021 over the Golden Tornadoes. So that's all the high school games locally. UNCP at the college level is at West Virginia Wesleyan this week. The Bobcats are winless coming into this one, and in fact, this is where the schedule gets easier over the next several weeks for UNCP, as their last 3 games are against the bottom 3 teams in the Mountain East Conference standings. 2 of those 3 are at home. They also have an open date coming up on November 4th, which wasn't originally scheduled, but Alderson brought us closed their program, and that fell off the schedule, so that'll be an open date here in a couple of weeks. So while the Braves are looking to continue the momentum from that record-setting day on Saturday, a 49-7 win over Fairmont State, West Virginia Wesleyan has been struggling through the season. Their combined total score is 345-57, which you don't see this a lot at the college ranks. Such a wide point spread. Points per game, they're allowing 57.5. They're only scoring 9.5. So it's really been a struggle from start to finish this season for West Virginia Wesleyan. But Coach Mark Hall pointed out when I talked to him on Monday that the Bobcats are coming off one of their better games this season. It wasn't a loss, but it was a more competitive game against West Liberty, who's been playing a little bit better of late. Ironically, the rushing record, I actually mentioned this earlier, that the Braves just broke came last year against West Virginia Wesleyan. So the Braves have had success running the ball against the Bobcats recently, so they'll be looking to continue that strong run performance from last week. UNCP's won 3 out of the 4 all-time meetings, including the last 3. I will note that one of those was a forfeit in the COVID year, but UNCP won 50-24 last year in Pembroke. And you can read about all those games at Robesonian.com and in the print edition of the Robesonian. Game stories from last week as well. A picks column. UNCP game preview will be coming on Friday morning. And then the other fall sports are going on as well. State tournament tennis matches on Wednesday afternoon. Purnell Sweat Lumberton soccer on Wednesday evening as well. And going back even to Tuesday night, St. Paul's and Midway played for the Southeastern Conference title in volleyball. Midway won that one, but St. Paul's still will shift into playoff mode as they will still earn a berth in the state playoffs. So, as always, your home for everything local sports is the Robesonian and Robesonian.com. For Paul Matthews behind the scenes, I'm Chris Stiles. Thanks to Mark Hall for joining us earlier in the show to talk UNCP football. Thanks for listening to the Robesonian Sports Report here on WAGR, and we'll see you next week.